What's going on, guys? So in front of me you were looking at our 2024 Forest River Surveyor Legend. This is the 240 BHLE. This is a bunk unit. Got a couple bunks back here. Have a big Murphy bed up front with the sofa, kitchen right here, dinette on the other side, and then the bathroom in the back left corner. So I already did a video on this topic, but I failed to take a measurement or a weight on something that a lot of people kind of questioned me about after that video, and we're going to try to fix that in this video. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Okay, so I guess you could call this round 2 of weighing the Surveyor. In round 1, what we did was we hooked the tractor to the front and we put the RV on the scales, and we used a weigh-safe hitch on the back of the tractor so we could see how much weight actually transfers to the tractor in its normal level height, and then if you lower the front down. Because I've shown weight scales on my channel before, and a lot of people say, well, if you have to lower the front of your trailer down tremendously and it's not perfectly level, you're going to get a much heavier reading up front. And the results of that video were, well, you should go back and check out that video because it was a lot more comprehensive, but to give you it in a nutshell, the results were pretty much what I thought they would be. The weight didn't change up front. If it did, it changed so minutely that the scale couldn't pick it up and register it. And if it were going to be heavier, then the scale would compress more and you would have most likely seen it. But there was no weight change, and we had the front of this RV dropping way down to the ground, and there was no change there. Well, a lot of people saw that, well, I didn't come back and look at the axle weight on the back of the trailer. So did the weight on the axles change when I lowered the front down? And that's what we're here to determine today. We're going to hook the tractor back up to the trailer. We're going to drop the front down. We're going to reconfirm what we saw on the previous test where we didn't see any weight increase on the tongue weight, or basically where the trailer hitches up to the truck. And we're going to kind of see if that changes now. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to go and we're also going to check out the axle weight and see if we can specifically see if one axle is carrying more of the load once we shift the front down. Now, a lot of comments on that video from various people thinking that this axle right here is going to be under significantly greater load whenever we have the front nose down, because that's going to essentially be like the fulcrum or the pivot point. Whereas a lot of folks believe that the equalizer, if it's working properly, should distribute that weight across both of these until just about the point that this axle lifts off the ground or the tire is no longer touching the ground. At that point, then obviously this axle would be carrying all the weight in this section. So we're going to find out. It's going to be really interesting to see how effective that equalizer is and if it does what it's supposed to do, which is equalize the weight across both of the axles. But we'll certainly be able to tell if more weight is transferred to this axle once we start lowering the front of it down. So this is going to be interesting. Let me go grab the tractor, get it positioned so we can get this test kicked off. Again, for this test, like the last one, we're going to be using the weigh-safe hitch. So I'm going to remove my pintle hitch right here. We're going to throw in my weigh-safe hitch, and I probably have to turn this around again because I don't have the space to put this back here and fit the pin through. Might be easier for me just to drill another hole in here so I have the space. And through the power of editing, that only took a second. All right, let's get it moved over to the trailer. Okay, so we are hooked underneath. I'm going to go ahead and take the weight off of the tongue jack. That was easy enough. Let's get this moved out of the way. Okay, so we are positioned properly to go ahead and pull the trailer on top. I have the front scissor jacks retracted about 6 to 7 inches. Which I think will be more than enough. If I need to retract them more, I can do that, of course. But we're pretty much level at this point. Let's take a look at the tongue weight. So before we do that, the numbers on this unit has a 5,483 pound dry weight. I probably have, at this point, I probably have less than 75 pounds worth of stuff on this RV. And I can show you because we removed the Blue Yeti battery pack. So the big battery pack that weighs over 100 pounds has been gone. Well, actually, let me take some of this back. So We have a battery on here, which the battery is going to add to that weight. So the battery is probably about 60 pounds. And then we have a half full propane can in here because I put one of the ones that I have. The other one's empty, and everything empty is already weighed as part of the dry weight. But that one's half full, and I'm going to imagine it probably weighs in the area of about 20 pounds more than it might normally weigh, simply because the can itself probably weighs about 10 pounds, and then you throw another 20 in. So let's just say it's a 30-pound can total right now. We have the B&W stuff all up front. This is kind of heavy stuff up here, so that's probably going to add another 40 pounds. So let's just say we're roughly at about, I'm going to say maybe 150, 200 pounds above what this number says right here. So we're at about 5,683 pounds, round up maybe 5,700 pounds. The loaded weight on this, gross vehicle weight rating, which we are nowhere near, is 7,545 pounds. And what do you guys think it is currently at right now on that scale? Let's check. So we are right at 600 pounds. Maybe a hair shy of it, but yeah, pretty much right at 600 pounds, which is 10%, which is generally what your dry weight, tongue weight on a lot of travel trailers will be. This is not an exact science, though. A lot of people say ideally you want to be at 10 to 15%. There are a lot of travel trailers that even when dry are at like 20%. They're super high simply because of the floor plan, because of where they put stuff. They put a big refrigerator up front. They did things on the inside which dictated where that weight was, and they didn't have enough room to move the axles on the frame to adjust for it. So there's a lot of travel trailers that have a lot more tongue weight, and there's even some travel trailers that have less tongue weight that are designed for you to fill them up front. If you look at the weight of this unit kind of semi-loaded, which it's not right now, 2 full propane cans plus the storage and everything up front, if you had just a little bit more, maybe 400 pounds worth of stuff total, then yeah, you'd probably be right around that 15%. But as it sits right now, we're right at about 10% of what the trailer weighs as it sits in this current configuration. So again, we're going to pull the trailer up using the tractor onto the Celoton scales. If you guys don't know, Celoton provided these scales to me a while back so I could do these types of weight evaluations. These things can hold up to like 100,000 pounds. It's crazy. 25,000 pounds per scale. They weigh like 65 pounds each, so it's a chore to set all this up. It's not one of those things that I can just set up in like 5 minutes. I got to set all this up, I got to wire it all up, and I got to get it connected to the main brain up there. But we're going to go ahead and pull this on top of the scales and see what the actual RV weighs. Again, we've already done this. It's going to weigh a little bit less because we did remove some stuff from here and we haven't really added anything since. So let's get this thing loaded on. So we have the display zeroed out, ready to load the trailer on. Let's get these removed. And one precautionary step that I take that is just precautionary is I put my tire chunks right here side by side. So if for some reason it starts to roll off, that will hopefully catch it, which I don't think it will. That would really only be in the scenario where the tractor itself, the brakes give out and for some reason it rolls forward. But if that started to happen, I would lower the tongue jack down slowly and hopefully that would arrest the movement. Okay, so as it sits right now, the trailer is almost perfectly level. So we don't have to worry too much about leveling it. This is about as level as you're gonna get. We can see the front tongue jack, or the front jacks are off the ground. The front tongue jack is clearly off the ground. Let's go ahead and drop the front down and see what the front axle load changes to. But before we do that, let's get a front axle load readout. Okay, so we are at 5,200 pounds. You can see it's dropped to 5,180 pounds, only because this goes in 20-pound increments, so it's a little in between there somewhere. Okay, so it's saying our left front wheel is at 1,200 pounds. Our right front wheel is at 1,380 pounds, giving us a total of 2,580 pounds on the front axle. And then our left rear wheel is at 1,240 pounds, and our right rear wheel is at 1,360 pounds, giving us a total of 2,600 pounds on the rear axle. Let's go ahead and drop the front of the RV down and see if that front axle weight and the rear axle weight changes. Okay, so instead of doing this test like 100 times at different heights, we went ahead and just dropped the front all the way down as far as we can go. And you can see the back is super, super high up in the air, and the front is super low to the ground. I mean, this is pretty extreme. Let's go look at the tongue jack real quick and see what the waist safe says. The front tongue jack is still off the ground by about 1/2 inch. Okay, so we are at right at the same spot here, a hair under 600 pounds, maybe right at 600 pounds. We're still off the ground here, so that is not touching. Let's go take a look at the axle weights. You know, I actually had to go back at the video and look at what my original reading here was because it's kind of confusing. So 5,200 pounds is what we gathered with just the weight of the trailer on the axles. Now that we have a significant amount of that weight tilted forward, but check this out. The overall weight of the trailer has actually gone up on the scales. So this is only measuring the weight on the axles themselves, 5,260 pounds. So we went up in weight on the trailer itself by tilting it forward. Now, I don't exactly understand the physics behind that, but maybe someone can help explain why. But according to this, you know, if you look at where the weight is, the weight significantly dropped on the rear axle. We kind of figured that might happen. That's a little bit more extreme than I even thought. On the front axle, the weight went up significantly. About 600 pounds is transferred to the front axle. So, you know, we kind of figured that could happen. And that was, again, for me, it was interesting just to see how much it went up. But the overall weight of the trailer on the scales has gone up. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? And this jumps in 20-pound increments, so just remember that if you see a jump here from 40 to 60, but it's just how this moves in terms of poundage. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. I'd love to know what your opinion is. I know a lot of people wanted to see this video. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Definitely an angle that you should not tow at. Very, very interesting to see what happens to the weight whenever you tilt it forward. That the tongue weight scale really didn't move very much. However, this scale moved significantly and this one moved significantly. So positive weight, negative weight, overall, it looks as if the weight actually increased on the axles by lowering the front down like that. That's kind of crazy. It's not what I thought it would have been. Leave a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know how I can retest this and maybe do something a little different. But I think this is a pretty comprehensive test considering how accurate these scales are and what they're used for commercially. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.